Hello everyone. In this video I will recommend you the Hollow Knight video game. Ash, start the hologram. Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania video game. It was released on February 24, 2017. As for the story, we don't really receive an explanation of the story when starting the game aside from a cutscene and a poem, but its lore is very deep. In fact, there are multiple theories about who the knight even is. What we know is that the game is played from the perspective of a bug called the Knight. We play in the kingdom of Hallownest, which used to be ruled by the Pale King, an ancient worm that is able to die and change bodies. Though he had an enemy called the Radiance, a giant moth goddess that through a plague called the Infection, started controlling all of the bug life in Hallownest, forming a hive mind. To fight the Radiance, the Pale King decided to take powers from the Void and attempt to create a hollow vessel that would seal the Radiance away. After creating thousands of vessels, he created the Hollow Knight, who he thought to be the perfect one. The player, the Knight, is one of these vessels. Although the Knight is not the Hollow Knight, this is a common misconception. With the help of the Dreamers, Monomon the Teacher, Lurien the Watcher and Hera the Beast, the Pale King sealed the Hollow Knight inside of the Black Egg, and the Radiance was imprisoned in the mind of the Hollow Knight. The Pale King also died for the last time. His corpse can be found laying in his throne in the White Palace. The problem is that the infection is leaking from the Black Egg, so our mission in this game is to break the faulty seals by killing the Dreamers and the Hollow Knight, to become the new Hollow Knight and seal the Radiance away once and for all. One of the main mechanics of this game is soul. When hitting and killing enemies, your soul meter will slowly fill up, and if you have enough soul, you can use it to cast powerful damage-dealing spells, or you can use the focus ability, which allows you to heal by channeling for about a second. The other mechanic I wanted to speak about is how dying in this game works. When you run out of masks, which are your health, you'll die and leave a shade behind, lose all of your geo and your soul meter will be broken, so it can store less soul than before. If you go back to the place where you died, you can kill your shade to get your geo back and repair your soul meter again. Note that if you die while fighting your shade, another shade will spawn which will override the previous one, so all geo will be lost. Although killing the newly spawned shade will still repair your soul meter. Now, there are a lot of bosses in Hollow Knight, 47 to be exact, so I'll only speak about some of them. The first two bosses you are likely to fight are the False Knight and Gru's Mother, both found in the Forgotten Crossroads, the first area in the game. The False Knight attacks by jumping around and sending shockwaves by using his mace. Gru's Mother bumps her body around the room and leaks smaller Gruz bugs when killed. After those, there is Hornet and the Massive Moss Charger, MMC for short. Hornet is a bug-like as daughter of the Pale King and Hera the Beast, which makes her one of the Knight's siblings, although she wasn't infused with Void. MMC is more of a mini-boss and is skippable. Both of these bosses are located in Greenpath. In the Fungal Wastes we fight the Mantis Lords, the leaders of the Mantis tribe. After beating one you'll have to fight the other two at once. If you go through the City of Tears and reach the Royal Waterways you can fight the Dung Defender, one of two surviving Royal Knights that used to serve the Pale King. If you find the right key, you'll be able to access the Soul Sanctum, a sub-area in the City of Tears. There you'll fight the Soul Master, who is able to teleport and shoot soul projectiles. Far above Dirtmouth, in the Crystal Peak, you'll find the Crystal Guardian, who uses crystal lasers to attack you. In the Kingdom's Edge you will fight Hornet once again, who has gotten stronger since last time, and obtain the King's Brand, which you'll use to open the Abyss door at the Ancient Basin. In this area you can also fight the Broken Vessel, a bug similar to you but full of infection. Then there are the Dreamers, protected by mighty bugs such as the Watcher Knights in the Soul Sanctum, protecting Lurien the Watcher or Yumu, a giant flying jellyfish that protects Monomon the Teacher. And finally, you'll fight the Hollow Knight, after killing the Dreamers and entering the Temple of the Black Egg. If you have obtained the Void Heart Charm, Hornet will aid you in the fight, and you'll be able to challenge the Radiance herself. Now, the Radiance is a very hard boss when compared to the Hollow Knight, and is one of the main endgame bosses. She shoots out beams of light and light walls, projectiles and spikes. She even has two phases, and in the second you'll have to fight without a solid floor, and rather many smaller platforms in the air. The other two main endgame bosses are the Pure Vessel, found in the Pantheon of the Knight in Godhome and Nightmare King Grim, NKG for short, an upgraded version of Troopmaster Grim, who you can fight in Grim's Tent in Dirtmouth or in the Hall of Gods or Pantheon of Hallownest if you chose to banish the Grim Troop. As for completionism, there are a lot of things to complete in Hollow Knight. About the abilities the Knight can get in Hallownest, they are 15, 9 of movement and 6 offensive ones, out of which 3 can be upgraded. Some of these are the Mothwing Cloak, which allows you to dash, even in the air, the Mantis Claw, which allows you to wall jump, and the Crystal Heart, which allows you to propel forward in a horizontal axis after channeling it. Offensive abilities also exist in Hollow Knight, which are the Vengeful Spirit, spell that sends a spirit flying forward, found by speaking to the Snail Shaman after the False Knight boss. Howling Wraiths, a cloud-shaped spell that deals damage upwards, found in the Fog Canyon. And Desolate Dive, ground pound spell pretty much, found in the City of Tears after defeating the Soul Master. These spells are actually upgradable to the Shade Soul, found in City of Tears behind a locked door that requires the elegant key, Abyss Shriek, acquired by using Howling Wraiths in a pedestal to the left of the Abyss, and Descending Dark, found in the Crystal Peak. Note that all of these spells consume soul. Something that you might not know is that the Descending Dark spell, also frequently shortened to D-Dark, gives you iframes, also known as invincibility for 0.4 seconds after using it, which is very helpful especially when Shade Cloak is on cooldown. There are also the Nail Arts, which are the Cyclone Slash, which hits enemies all around you, the Dash Slash, which causes an attack with a lot of range after dashing, and the Great Slash, which deals a lot of damage in a small area. To unlock them, you'll have to speak to Nailmasters Mado, Oro and Shio respectively. You can also upgrade your base nail so that it deals more damage by speaking to the Nailsmith in the City of Tears. You can upgrade your nail by using Geo and Pale Ore. The game has transportation systems that you can use to move faster around the map. For example, you can obtain the Tram Pass in the failed tramway in Deepnest, which will allow you to use the trams around Hallownest. They work similarly to fast travel in other games. Stags can also be used to move around Hallownest quickly. You just have to head to a stag station. There is one in almost every area, and pay the toll if it's your first time on the station. Then, the stag can take you to any other station for free. Addressing the game's economy, there is Geo, the main currency in Hollow Knight. Now, Geo is used for a lot of things in the game, like buying different items from NPC shops, paying tolls to unlock stag stations or benches, and more. Generally, it's not that difficult to obtain Geo, since basic activities like killing enemies yield you Geo. Breaking Geo rocks is another way to obtain it. For endgame purchases like all of the unbreakable charms, you need tens of thousands of Geo. The most efficient way to grind for it is to head into the failed tramway in Deepnest, rest at the bench, and start killing the Carver Hatchers and the Dirt Carvers they spawn. Each run here gives about 500 to 600 Geo. About the Pale Ores, they are found all over Hallownest, generally locked behind difficult activities such as the Colosseum of Fools or climbing to the top of the Crystal Peak. There are a total of 6 Pale Ores in Hollow Knight, and if you get them all, you can have the Nailsmith forge you the Pure Nail, which is the maximum tier of nail you can get. Next up are the Mask Shards and Vessel Fragments. They are both scattered around Hallownest, but they are very useful. With 4 Mask Shards you'll gain a new mask, which is essentially another heart, which allows you to take more damage before dying. There are 16 Mask Shards in Hollow Knight, which means that you can get 4 extra masks on top of the 5 you get by default, totaling 9 masks. Vessel Fragments on the other hand, those increase the amount of soul you can store at once. You need 3 Vessel Fragments to make a soul vessel. There are 9 Vessel Fragments in Hollow Knight, meaning that you can get 3 soul vessels. If you complete all 3 soul vessels, you'll be able to carry twice as much soul as before. Now, let's talk about the charms. There are 45 charms in Hollow Knight, but only 40 can be acquired in one save. For example, you get to choose between Grimchild or Carefree Melody depending on whether you choose to banish the Grim Troop or not, or you can upgrade the fragile charms into unbreakables. Charms give the player bonuses. They are acquired in many different ways, some are purchasable, while some others are just found around Hallownest. Now, there are some limitations when it comes to charms. For example, they can only be equipped or unequipped while resting on a bench, and you may not equip all charms at once. Along with charms, there are charm notches, which are essentially the slots you have to equip charms. Some charms only consume one charm notch like the Thorns of Agony or the Wayward Compass, but there are charms that consume more, like Shaman Stone which consumes 3 charm notches, or Hive Blood which consumes 4 charm notches. Last thing on charms, there is a mechanic called Overcharm, which allows you to equip one more charm than the maximum normally allowed. For example, if you only have 1 charm notch left, and attempt to equip a charm that takes more than 1 charm notch, for example Sharp Shadow, which takes 2 charm notches, and you try doing so a few times, it will get equipped regardless and overcharm your character. This means that you will take twice as much damage as normal from all sources until you unequip enough charms. Now, let's talk about difficulties. When you start playing for the first time, you can't choose any difficulty or mode, but there are 2 modes that you can unlock. These are Steel Soul, which is obtainable after beating the game for the first time, and the Godseeker mode, which is unlocked after beating the Pantheon of the Sage. Steel Soul is like normal Hollow Knight, except that if you die, the save file is deleted. Note that if you die in a dream, for example in Godhome, the death will not count and your save won't be deleted. Dying in the White Palace or being killed by the Radiance, however, counts as a death. Godseeker mode, on the other hand, spawns you directly in Godhome with every ability and charm unlocked and maximum stats. Speaking about Godhome, it was introduced with the Godmaster DLC and is accessible in a hidden area in the Royal Waterways, after opening the Godseeker's cocoon with a simple key. After using the Dream Nail on the Godseeker, you'll be able to enter Godhome. There, you will find the 5 Pantheons and the Hall of Gods. In the Hall of Gods you can practice against every boss in the game in their normal, attuned, difficulty, or attempt their Ascended and Radiant difficulties. In Ascended difficulty, the boss will deal double damage, and in some bosses, changes will be made to the arena. For example, in the Gru's Mother fight, there are now only 3 platforms to stand on and the rest of the ground is covered in spikes. Radiant mode is like Ascended, but you will die in 1 hit. It is recommended to get Overcharmed to beat the bosses in Radiant mode, since you will die in 1 hit anyways. In the Hall of Gods, there is a secret area in the rightmost ceiling, where you can access the Eternal Ordeal, in which you'll have to fight against infinite waves of Zote the Mighty variants. As I mentioned, it's infinite, but you only need to beat 57 Zotes to have the statue turn gold. Definitely, the Eternal Ordeal is a funny detail that you might miss. About the Pantheons, there are 5 of them. These are essentially Hollow Knight's boss rush system. The Pantheons of the Master, Artist and Sage aren't that hard, but it gets more complicated when you get to the Pantheon of the Knight, which includes some of the tougher bosses in the game and the Pure Vessel as the last one. But none of this compares to the Pantheon of Hallownest, also known as Pantheon 5 or just P5. In it you'll fight every boss in the game back to back and the Absolute Radiance as the last boss. You can also attempt doing Pantheons with bindings, which basically make things harder for you. They limit things like the use of charms or the amount of health you have, for example. Now, it's possible to activate all bindings at once, but be aware that it will make the Pantheon excruciatingly difficult. You might be able to beat the first few Pantheons, but especially the Pantheon of Hallownest with all bindings at once, usually shortened to P5AB, is incredibly difficult. Although, if you manage to do it, first up I want to congratulate you and also tell you that the bindings on top of the Pantheon will shine brighter. You decide if this is worth the grind or not. Something that you might not know is that beating the Pantheon of Hallownest without getting hit even once will make the jewel on top of it glow slightly more. Although this is unnoticeable if you have done all bindings at once, as the larger glow this provides overwrites the smaller glow of Hitless, usually shortened to R5, which stands for Radiant Pantheon 5. Team Cherry initially planned to make this jewel black, void, if you beat the Pantheon of Hallownest hitless, but this idea was later scrapped. Beating the rest of the Pantheons hitless will not change anything aesthetically, but it is still tracked within the game's code, so it's possible to know whether a player has done hitless Pantheons through external applications or websites that have access to your save file. Next up is the Colosseum of Fools, which is located at the top of Kingdom's Edge. The Colosseum of Fools is basically an arena in which you fight waves of enemies and a boss at the end, and receive a prize if you manage to defeat it. The prize varies depending on which trial you are doing. Speaking about the trials, there are 3 of them, which are the Trial of the Warrior, Trial of the Conqueror and Trial of the Fool. Something you may not know is that the Colosseum of Fools was actually a goal in Hollow Knight's Kickstarter, but it was not hit. The reason it's in the game? Well, it actually was funded, not through Kickstarter but actually through PayPal backers. There are many other things to complete in Hollow Knight, like the Delicate Flower Quest, for which you have to bring a flower from an area in the resting grounds all the way to a room in Queen's Gardens without getting hit. Other NPCs may also accept the Delicate Flower, like Elderbug or the Godseeker. Giving her the flower changes the game's ending a bit after the Pantheon of Hallownest. The Hunter's Journal is given to you by the Hunter NPC. It essentially acts as a bestiary in which you've got to kill enemies to fill the entries, and to max the entries you require multiple kills of each enemy in the game. Grubs are found all over the map, and you're tasked to free them from their glass cages. If you saved enough grubs, the Grubfather NPC will give you geo and other valuables. Saving all of them will reveal a rather interesting truth about the Grubfather. By the way, if you defeat the Collector boss, you'll obtain the Collector's map, which lets you to see the location of the grubs in the map. If you saved Zote from the Vengefly King and rescued Bretta, you'll find a statue of Zote under Bretta's house. You can fight Great Prince Zote, often shortened to GPZ, there, up to a maximum of 10 times. Note that he will get stronger and stronger the more times you fight him. Similarly to this, you can also fight the White Defender in the Royal Waterways up to 5 times, and every time you beat him and attempt fighting him again, he'll deal more damage per hit. Also, if you choose not to save Zote from the Vengefly King or haven't fought GPZ in Dirtmouth, you won't have to fight him in the Pantheons in Godhome either. There's also the White Palace, accessed by using the Awoken Dream Nail on the corpse of a Kingsmold in the Ancient Basin. The Awoken Dream Nail requires 1800 essence, which is acquired by fighting dream bosses, warrior dreams, and by using the Dream Nail on Whispering Roots. Getting back to the White Palace, you'll be presented with multiple platforming challenges in it, and at the end, you'll find the Pale King lying dead in his throne, and you can get a fragment of the Kingsoul Charm. You can find the other half in the Queen's Gardens, and if you head to the Abyss with the Kingsoul Charm equipped, you can obtain the Void Heart. Fighting the Hollow Knight with the Void Heart Charm will result in Hornet aiding you in the fight. From there, you can either Dream Nail the Hollow Knight and fight the Radiance or go for the Sealed Siblings ending. If you ignore the window, you have to Dream Nail the Hollow Knight. There is a breakable wall in the White Palace, which allows you to access the Path of Pain, which is the ultimate platforming challenge of Hollow Knight. I recommend you use the Hive Blood Charm for it, and while it consumes 4 charm notches, it allows you to passively heal without using soul. Note that after beating this area, you won't be able to access it again. Last thing on completionism, I want to speak about the achievements. There are 63 of them, and some are pretty straightforward, like killing certain bosses, acquiring charms, mask shards or vessel fragments, rescuing all of the grubs and more. But some of the achievements require multiple playthroughs, like Ritual, which requires you to defeat Nightmare King Grim, and Banishment, which is acquired by banishing the Grim Troop, and you can't do both of those in a single save file. Other achievements require you to unlock different endings, and there are also speedrun achievements like Speedrun 1 and 2, which are unlocked after beating the game in 10 or 5 hours respectively. There's also Speed Completion, which requires you to achieve 100% in-game completion in under 20 hours. I also want to speak about mods. Hollow Knight used to be moddable in version 1.4.3.2 through Mod Installer and by downpatching Hollow Knight. But since then, the modding community has moved on, and now modding works on the latest Hollow Knight version. To install mods, you'll want to download Scarab, link in the description, and have the latest version of the game. With Scarab, you can easily enable or disable any mod. Now, what do Hollow Knight mods do? Well, there are some like the Debug mod, which are pretty straightforward, essentially allowing you to become invincible, gain any item instantly, no-clip through platforms and more. But there are other, more complex mods that feature way harder versions of normal bosses, like the Tribe of Battle or any Radiance. These bosses are for the most expert Hollow Knight players that seek a greater challenge than what is provided by the vanilla experience. There are also mods that add crazier things, like some Dead Cells bosses into Hollow Knight, or even simpler mods like Hall of Gods Extras, which adds the Hollow Knight and normal Radiance to the Hall of Gods. Now, onto some miscellaneous stuff about this great game. Hollow Knight was made by Team Cherry, which is composed by Ari Gibson, artist, William Pellin, programmer, Jack Vine, also programmer, and David Kazi, technical director, but he left the team in 2017. Christopher Larkin and Matthew "Leth" Griffin work as contractors for Team Cherry. Larkin is a composer and was responsible for the amazing soundtracks and music, while Leth works on marketing and PR. Hollow Knight was made in the Unity game engine. Other popular games made with Unity are Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Cuphead, Subnautica and Genshin Impact. Something you may not know about this game is that it used Playmaker, a visual scripting asset for the Unity game engine, to make a lot of features, including some enemy AI and more. Hollow Knight is available for Microsoft Windows, Xbox One, PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch. Hollow Knight is a fully single-player game, and there are no internal or external purchases, as all of the game's DLCs are free and are incorporated in the game itself. About these DLCs, there are 4 of them, which are Hidden Dreams, The Grim Troop, Lifeblood and Godmaster DLCs. Something that you might not know is that the upcoming game, Hollow Knight Silksong, was initially planned to be a DLC of Hollow Knight instead of a separate game, in which you would play as Hornet instead of the Knight, but the idea grew way too big, so Team Cherry decided to turn it into a full-on sequel. Adding to this, Hollow Knight began as a Kickstarter project in 2014, and having a second playable character was one of the metas, which was hit. There was another meta which mentioned being able to play as Zote, but sadly it wasn't reached. There are some similar video games to Hollow Knight, such as Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Guacamelee 1 and 2, Axiom Verge 2, and the upcoming games Hollow Knight Silksong and Crossworn. Hollow Knight is rated everyone plus 10, for ages 10 and above. Well everyone, that's all for this video. I'll say goodbye with what I think is a greeting humans used.